a lot of women like the man to approach the woman, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
so they're bearing all the risk, and they are at the workplace, and they might actually like you, like legitimately, not in a creepy way. They like you. So it's them who have to kind of come up and sort of plant the seed and like, so did you want to maybe go for coffee or whatever? And there are some women that just legit respond poorly to that. Like, oh my God, I don't like this guy. Why is he asking me out? Now I feel so uncomfortable. And they consider him creepy because, well, just because you don't like him.
Because they're not
doesn't
into him.
make
Yes.
creepy.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
He obviously likes you. So you could be like a little bit more gentle. But what I can tell you too is if the guy came to you and said the exact same words in the exact same way, but you actually did like him, everything would be fine.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
we have to, like I said, and more than 50% of people find a partner or a sex partner or someone to play with, or, a marriage partner, whatever, in the workplace. And there's no policy in the world that any company can write that's going to stop that. People won't stop. So rather than that, let's give people the tools to navigate these situations.
Welcome back. We are on today with my guest, Bobbi Bidochka, on the Tool for This Shit podcast. I'm your host, Angie. You can come and find me at angies.com. That's angie-s.com, or on my Linktree link, which is linktree/Tool for This Shit. Both links are in the show notes, just like every week. Listen, that's the place you can go if you want to be part of my community, if you want me to show you how to create your own podcast and get involved with what I do. I'd love to see you there. So if you like the show, please give it a 5-star rating and review, and be sure to tell your friends. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you are listening to right now. The more you do that, the more it helps new listeners discover this show. In today's episode with Bobbi, we discuss what happens if you like someone at work. Did the Me Too movement make that more complicated or just impossible? We discuss how to go about it in a respectful way and how to protect yourself if you're ready to make your move. Also, we go over if parts of the Me Too movement, as necessary and a bad time as it was for it to happen, okay? We are wondering if it also made it more difficult for women to advance in the workplace. Sounds weird, right? A little bit of a contradiction here. But we discuss the unforeseen adverse effects of the Me Too movement for women in the workplace based on Bobbi's research. So, without further ado, help me give a big warm welcome to Bobbi, and let's begin. Welcome, Bobbi.
Hello, Angie.
Hi, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm excellent. My pleasure to be here.
No, I'm actually really excited to have you on. I've been looking forward to this because what we're about to talk is a topic that I've actually tried to breach with different people, but I've never aired them because it just wasn't really comprehensive. It's a sensitive topic to talk about. And I sort of also felt like I need a bit of time to process everything and what I actually really wanted to how I wanted to cover it. So let's see how today goes. But I'm really excited because that's your speciality, where the others, it wasn't. So it was sort of like a side conversation. So it was okay to remove those bits. But this is actually your thing. So I'm actually really happy to have you on, because when I've listened to you on YouTube and on other podcasts, and you're very eloquent and you seem to have a very balanced view on things. And so, yeah, I'm really looking to dive in. And basically the topic is all about the era after Me Too, after the hashtag Me Too, the good, the bad, the ugly, bringing in discernments, the impact on it in the workplace and so on. So before we dive in, Bobbi, please introduce yourself, where you live and what you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Angie. So I'm Bobbi Bidochka. I'm currently set up in Montreal, Canada. And so I'm the author of Sexual Intelligence in Business. And that was published late January. And then I've also started my second book on early and first sexual experiences. So, a bit of a sex researcher, I guess you could say, and writer. I've written a few articles as well. Also co-chair of the academic conference Love and Sex with Robots. And also, I run my own company called Imagine Ideation, which is we move ideas forward through consultation, facilitation, events, and ecosystem diplomacy.
Okay. Oh, I love this. This is great. Are you also, because you seem so well placed also in terms of like almost talking like within the human resource and, you know, the workplace and stuff. Are you sort of like a researcher in that domain as well?
Well, I think that just comes from a ton of experience. I worked in almost every sector in many different positions. And so I really have a breadth of knowledge that I really brought into the book because I just noticed, some things happening after the Me Too movement in terms of building a business in a male-dominated world, and also, just I have background in finance, in government, in the arts, in almost every sector you can imagine.
Okay. Well, that's good. Okay. So what I wanted to, I guess, like where we could start is the post-Me Too paradigm, right? So if we were to start with the good, because obviously I feel like obviously it was almost like a bad time, I guess like certain, some behaviors were, atrocious, like things like, what's his name? Weinstein.
Yeah,
Harvey Weinstein. Yeah, Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby. I mean, those kind of people, they need to rot in jail forever. In my opinion, that's my opinion. But that kind of forceful attack and abuse of power, is just really really disturbing. So that was a good thing that people felt the strength to come out. But obviously, there's been also other ripple effects, and so I know we're going to go into the lack of discernment, the witch hunt, the man bashing, all this kind of stuff. So, but to start off on the positive note, like what would you say, in your experience, like the good? Is there anything else in terms of like what are the good things with the hashtag Me Too movement that happened a few years ago?
Yeah, I mean the majority of it was incredibly important.
Yes.
As you stated, being able to, I guess, finally have some voices heard. Not that they weren't speaking out, historically, but sometimes it takes a certain person or just, an influencer or someone famous to get the headlines, and then you get the attention. Certainly the positive effects are voices heard, policy. It's pretty much mandatory now for companies to have sexual harassment policy where it wasn't before. It just really put the topic on the forefront, which was important in terms of women's advancement. Like without that, without tackling that, women just won't fully advance.
Right. Yeah. And it's because I'm thinking of something that I heard you talk about, because obviously there's, how it helps women's advancement, like you just said now, but there's also the other bit around the mentor-mentee relationship, like which can slow down the promotions of the advancement of women in the workplace, which we're going to go into a little bit later. So could you just specify what you mean by how it's helped women advance in the world, how the Me Too movement has helped support that?
I mean, just the feminist movements over the last 50 years have been progressing towards this very point. And so, it was a natural progression, but without addressing the power relations and sexual harassment in the workplace, there was always going to be a ceiling, a limit to which, and the elements that go along with that. When people are trying to advance into positions and just enter into certain sectors just to begin with, there's a lot of things that need to get dealt with, but the sexual harassment is obviously the most traumatic component to a variety of other things as far as pay equity goes, pipeline building, mentor, mentee, like you said, advisement, hiring practices. I mean, the list goes on. But the sexual harassment factor is critical to address, because it's more about power relations in the workplace than it is about, really sex in particular.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because obviously when I think of the Me Too movement, I separate it slightly to the feminist movement. I know it's part of it, obviously, but I kind of separate. I guess what I wanted to focus on today is more like the actual impact of Me Too based on, the things that you've written and spoken about. Because obviously, yes, feminist movement was important for us to even just get the vote, to be able to divorce, to not be a pariah because we don't have a man at 42. Do you know what I mean? Those are part of it. But in terms of the Me Too, when did it start? Was it 2016? I can't remember now. The Me Too, it was around...
Me Too movement actually started many, many years prior to that. I think it was 2006.
Oh, really?
It just didn't get traction until the Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby and some of the bigger cases came out. And then, of course, Alyssa Milano did that tweet. And then, then it kind of went viral, as they say.
Right. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, Tatiana Burke has had the hashtag Me Too for a good 10 years, if not more, before that. And it was a place to give voice for women, most, in particular, when we're talking about Black women, they have an added complexity.
Oh, yeah.
To that as well, domestic violence and things like that. And so that's where it originated from. And then it got all the attention, once the higher profile, like I said, the headlines, once you have headlines, then you get traction. But, as far as like I said, you've got your sexual harassment policy, which is a great thing that came out. Women are more believed. Like historically, women aren't believed when they say I've been harassed or I've been raped or what have you. And so the legal construct seems a bit reversed, right? Because it's sort of innocent until proven guilty, which means when you accuse someone of raping or harassing you, they are presumed innocent, which means then, well, if they're innocent, what am I? And it just, in those cases, it adds a very gray and muddy legal issues, which because of the Me Too movement now, more cases have been prosecuted, which means now some more precedents is set. And so I wouldn't say it's easier, but there's definitely more, say, legal infrastructure in place for anyone who has experienced sexual harassment to make a case.
But I think also maybe a component as to, why maybe because I think being innocent to proven guilty, I think is a very basic human right that needs to stay, and it needs to go across the board. But obviously when it comes to things like sexual harassment and rape, I think, the reason why maybe it becomes so muddy and it becomes an issue in that area, because it's like, oh, what does that make me then? Oh, that person, is that because I think, women, maybe there's a lot of, because of the way society works, how we've been brought up into the world and things like that, is that we almost think, oh, is it our fault? Do you know what I mean? There's always a part of, what did we do? Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, there's always that.
There's nothing you can do if someone's like, you're not responsible for the other person's action, if that makes sense. So like that's why it becomes really muddy, and it's a very they're filled with shame when they come and come forward. It's very hard to come forward with things like this.
Yeah, right off the bat, coming forward on that is
very hard. Yeah, but I kind of want to move over because that's really, really heavy, and but I was just wanted to add, because you were saying about with Black women, so it's interesting because at university I wrote this essay around feminism, but I chose to write on Black feminism. This is now back in 2004, and I know you mentioned about victims of violence and domestic violence, but actually what I remember from back then is that it was very important to keep in mind that when we are talking about our rights and as women and our freedom, is that it was to be really cognizant of the fact that they are still fighting for back then, and still today in places, is that they are fighting just even for what we are taking, certain rights we're taking for granted. And so it was like being cognizant that actually for certain communities, like Black communities and other communities, is that they are not as far ahead as a white woman. And it was just like that was this imbalance, right, that we need to rectify. Even
that's been an ongoing debate, amongst the feminist movements from the very beginning, because not all women are when when they were fighting for the vote, there were some women that didn't care to vote. It's like, I don't need a vote, whereas other women like, no, the vote's important. And so when fighting for the vote or certain things like that, when there are other groups, I mean, intersectionality is also very key to consider, because like you said, it depends on the context, the country. And are you, what is the racial components? What is the gender component, your identity components? Like there's socioeconomic considerations. All of these groups experience, gender inequity and discrimination and sexual harassment differently. And so there's no one feminist, even amongst feminists, there's still dissension and disagreement.
Yeah, and I think I think that's okay to have those difference of opinion and on those things. And I think one of the things that I do want to bring up today is that, so obviously, like, now we've mentioned the good parts of the Me Too, but I want you to now to talk about a bit about the sort of the unexpected adverse effects of the Me Too movement for women in the workplace. And I know I've heard you talked about things like, with the mentorship, which can become very awkward if you have had a male mentor, and how now that may not be a possibility because of, obviously the man being fearful that it may be misconstrued. You as a woman are fearful what other people may say. Could you talk a little bit into that, what that actually means?
Yeah. So there's a term called second order consequences, which is, like we talked about the initial consequence of the Me Too movement, sort of the unexpected things that happen and from a secondary level. And this is the whole reason why I wrote the book, because I was experiencing it myself. Is the environment. I mean, right away, the environment got very confused. So everybody really like froze up. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. How do we talk to each other now? How do we look at each other? How do we operate? Because for sure, most people became very aware of the issue and certainly didn't want to get caught up in it, right? And so for a lot of, male leadership, mentorship, as an example, is very important to promoting and advancing your career. And so, historically, before women enter the workplace, I mean, even today, guys, they go for beers or they go golfing or whatever it is that they're going to do. They get to know each other, they're friends, and, that's how you get business, and that's how you get advanced, and that's normal. But then if women can't participate in that because, we can't go for drinks, or we can't go for lunch, can't go for dinner, now we have to have, a third party present in the meeting, or the doors open, because what if something got misconstrued? Because that happens, that happens all the time. And so, there was actual companies that were, I'm not going to name them. I think I named them in the book, but they just were afraid then to hire women because, okay, well, we're inviting a problem. And you see some of the companies of the CEOs where they got, wrapped up in, accusations and cases and were guilty. I mean, it really reflects poorly on a company. And so it's like a PR nightmare, right? On top of the fact that it's morally and ethically like wrong. People wanted to avoid that. And so what do we do? Okay, well, I'm just not going to go for dinner with you. And we're not, no more drinks on the airplane or at the holiday party. If you go to a conference together, you can't travel in the same car. If you have to take a plane, you shouldn't sit beside each other. If you're in the hotel, you should be on different floors. And it just started to get really, really, and I just was experiencing it myself. So I'm surrounded by a lot of really, really, really great men. And they're like, okay, well, is it okay that we go for dinner? Like, you don't have to. Like, it was all very like walking on eggshells, not sure what I can say, what I can do. And then the onus sort of became on me to be like, to stand up and say, no, it's okay. We can go for dinner. It's fine. Don't worry about it. And so, it's just everybody kind of got a bit scared over the situation, and there was less how do we deal with this?
Yeah, I feel like that was, it sort of lacked, I felt like the Me Too movement sort of lacked discernment, because it was just like, it seemed like they were, and again, I may be completely wrong. That's just sort of what I perceived, was that it seemed to be putting every situation, every single man into one big bad bucket.
Yes.
And it sort of, it renders everything very controlled. You have to stay on different floors. You cannot sit next to each other. You cannot have lunch. You cannot, and this is sort of completely ignoring the fact that relationships that we build help enhance the workplace as well. If you don't have a good rapport with your colleagues, it's going to make that workload really, a lot more stressful, right? So you have to be able to have a rapport. You have to be able to, there has to build trust with someone else. And that doesn't always happen at the water fountain at work or, making coffee in the kitchen. There's only so much you can say there and feel relaxed. And I think it just becomes this clinical environment. And I don't want this world to become so clinical and sterile. Obviously, maybe sterile is not the right choice of word here. We're not trying to be making babies at work. But
no, but I've had that. I've had that word used. Yeah.
Yeah. And also there's this other thing that people are completely forgetting, is that now I haven't checked the statistics in years, but I remember that there was this thing where people said that most people found their spouse at the workplace.
Yes.
And those, I'm sure, are not Me Too hashtags. You know what I'm saying?
Not.
It's like they are genuine. You get to meet, you spend so much time at work. Are you supposed to not build rapport? We're going to get levels of depression that are going to be beyond dramatic. I think if we tell people you can only talk to the same gender as you, and not even that, what does that mean? Because, it's like, so, what happens to someone who's non-binary and queer, and how do we, it's going to become this whole, can I not just speak with someone, hang out with someone that actually I enjoy their spirit? And then we have to learn, like you said, there was no how to, right? And it's like, there was definitely this lack of what do we do if we're not comfortable? Because it's also, I think now that the Me Too movement has come up, what has transpired, I don't know, let me know if you feel the same or if you see this differently, but I noticed that, because the conversation came up a lot more with people around me and other women and other men, that they were like, I could tell that a lot of women did not know how to express when they were uncomfortable. And I also could hear that men were like, and I understand, and I know a lot of people were bashing them for it, but where men were going, well, no, I can't say or do anything, just because I have a dick, you know what I mean? It's like, but I understand that reaction in the sense that if you are let's say if I was to insult you from the get-go, Bobbi, right? The conversation would have ended right there, right? If I was saying horrible things to you, right? Without knowing you, like complete stranger, the conversation has ended right there. We are not going to come to any resolution. And I think one of the things I wish I'd written them down for today. But there was I remember I had these are 5 things, where it's definitely not okay to be making a sexual advancement, and also we need to help women and teach them. And also men, by the way, because men are also harassed by men and women as well. Is that we need to tell them that it's okay, to say something, and how to circumvent that freeze feeling. Because, some people fight or flight, but there's also freezing, right? So if you're not running away and if you're not fighting back, some people are freezing, and some men think that that's a consent, and it's not. So, yeah, is this something that you feel echoed in Canada? Because I'm based in Europe, I'm in the UK, so things may be slightly different. But is that something that
it's the same situation here. And I think that, like you said, there was a lot of finger wagging and saying, here's all of your bad behaviors, which is why after the book, I realized that I actually need to create a training program for corporations and companies so that people can actually, well, what do I say? How do I reject someone very politely and nicely in the workplace that doesn't demolish our relationship because we work together, right?
Yeah.
And so there are key ways to address these. But the thing is that people need training, right? And not just women have historically struggled with speaking up. And I think it's just a matter of practice. It's giving them, here's the sentences that you can use in these situations. Let's practice them. Let's in a workshop stand up and say, because you have to feel it come out your mouth. You have to start to practice to say that comment made me uncomfortable. possible? Can we change the subject? Or, or if someone asks you out at work, thank you, that's very flattering, I'm not interested. But also the people on the other end need to also learn how to receive those comments. So it's not just about women speaking up, it's how does it land on the other side?
Yeah, but this way, because the way you say it's so polite, I am so not like that. See, I've I need to learn though, but it's funny because there's one area, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but it's like there's in one area where I have very clear boundaries, and I can speak up and I can say no, and I'll fight you, and it's in that area. Mm-hmm. So in the job I had, the CEO had made a joke. It was a sexual innuendo. And the thing is, there was nothing going on, by the way. It's just there was nothing in that way. But he'd made a joke, and it was first thing in the morning. My computer was like, for me to turn on my computer, I had to go under the desk. So I had to go on all fours. It was embarrassing. And he was sat at desk next to me, and people were there, and it was first thing in the morning, so it was quite quiet. So what he said was heard in the whole office. It was a small office, and he said something like, it was a joke around, it's too early to get down on all fours, something like that. Mm-hmm. Really not okay. Well, he never said anything like that before, ever, in many months that I'd worked for him. And I heard that, and I was like, no, that's not happening, not on my way. And I went, I said, you said what? Like, literally, but I said it so loud so that everyone else could hear it. Because I was like, you're not putting me in that position where people are going to think that I'm doing things for you so that I can keep my job or whatever it is. I didn't want, because it's a bad look on me as well. He doesn't realize the impact that can have and how gossipy people can become. So I just went, you said what now? And he was like, I said, no, never happening. I come on, but I shut it down. So very harsh, but he had I was like, you have crossed so many lines right there. Like, it's not, like I love a good joke, but that was like, I think that is the unawareness of, obviously this is someone who'd always been in very powerful positions in financial services. He's not used to hearing no. Mm-hmm. And I'm definitely someone who pushes back,
Yeah.
I'm happy.
I'm the same way.
But that was not okay.
Yeah. That's the thing though, like the me's and you's of the world, we're not in the majority. Right. And so I communicate my boundaries very clearly. People know pretty quick where I'm at. I'm okay with sex jokes. I'm okay with a lot of stuff, but when I'm not, you'll hear it.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that. I've never had a problem with that, but most women aren't like that.
Yeah.
And that's why we need awareness and training. And most men have just, it's not that they've gotten away with it. It's just that they weren't ever called out. So they really didn't know where the boundaries were. Right. And so, like you said, it's the problem with some of the Me Too movement is there's been a bit of a, some of the women are putting on these lenses, like they're just looking for the next thing that might be possibly a sexual harassment. Looking over their shoulder and this is, I don't want women to feel like that.
No, exactly. I mean, that it does really, it really makes me so angry. Because I find it so upsetting to hear when women don't have it in them, they freeze, because I don't like to hear that, because because it makes me worried for them. It makes me really, really worried for them, because even when we speak up, that doesn't stop anything horrendous to happen. But at least we have that thing in us that we have that fighting instinct, right? When it comes to that. Now, I don't have that in most other areas in my life, right? But in that area, I really have it, and I'm really grateful for it. But what I've come to understand is that, like you said, is that lack of awareness from men. That's what I really realized, is like they are not aware. Not all of them. Some people are obviously malicious. And yes, I mean, if you have to put somebody to sleep to touch them, clearly you're not getting a yes. If you're dragging someone, by the hair, like fucking Weinstein, he knows he's getting off on hurting people. Very different. But, if I was to talk about the general in general, humans being good and all, it's really that, but I think it's a mix of like that, they're not aware because they haven't been called out. And also because in the past, women didn't know they could say no, right? And there's this added, that is merged with the fact that I think it's almost this, they've inherited this genetically, where men are not aware of this, but they feel entitled to our bodies. And it comes in, like, I'll give you an example. This was a work related. I was working on an event, and there's also the mix of cultures, right? So culturally, there's different boundaries that are okay, right? It's not the same in every culture in terms of, touching someone's arm or not touching someone's arm, right? Mm-hmm. But it was at this event in London, and I was helping out, and they were very friendly. There were like 3 men, and it was a, what do you call it? It was like a travel event. And so they had all these different stands. I was helping out. And this guy I was talking with, I noticed, like, I think it was, I don't know if it was on the second day that I was there or something. I felt his hand on my back. But it wasn't like, oh, hey, would you mind going and get some water, like just to get my attention, It wasn't. He put in my hand, he was talking to me, and then he was like moving his hand up and down between my shoulders, like stroking my back. Oh. And there were other people around at the time. So all I did was, like, I moved away. Yeah. I think I moved away, and I think I even took my hand and I pushed his arm down. I was just like, and there was other people around, so I wasn't. I was like, let me just wait till we're alone, because I could tell he wasn't being malicious. And then, and I think before I had time to say something, it happened again. And then I took him aside and I said, "Hey, listen, I don't, please don't, touch my back and stroke my back, like And then he said, "Oh, but I was just trying to call you, and I couldn't get your attention." And I was like, no, we were talking, you were right next to me. He was trying to, I think he was unaware that he was gaslighting me. I don't think he was trying to do it on purpose. He was basically embarrassed. And I said, no, I can hear you. If I can't hear you, just give me a little tap on the side of my arm, yeah. Maybe, otherwise just come up to me, it's not that big of a stand, like you can, basically 2
well,
steps.
If you're close enough to touch.
Well, this is it, right? Exactly. Oh, good point. That's what I should have said. Well, where were you? Yeah, exactly. And then I realized that he was not aware. And then obviously, but from then he kept his distance, right? Which perfect for me. It was great. But I realized in that moment that he was not aware. And I told this story to a friend of mine who's based in the US. And she was like, "Oh my God, you did so well. You said something." And I was like, "What do you mean?" "I would have froze." "You really?" Yeah, and that's when I was aware. I was like, oh my God, we really need to be teaching this at school. Yeah. Obviously, maybe not as violent as I am, because I'm quite abrupt, and I will fight the person. That's an extreme.
Nobody does. You need to teach it early on so that everybody knows.
Yeah.
Don't touch each other, unless there's a clear consent and invitation to do so. But just as a rule. But yeah, you have to, this is the conundrum of all sort of social movements and sort of victimization. If I were to say so boldly, to get out of being a victim, one must, be the teacher.
Yeah.
The onus is on you to tell them that's not appropriate. Please don't do it again.
Yeah, because you can't. If I kept quiet and he'd done it every day because that's what he does normally, mm-hmm. he would be right to assume that I was okay with it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you don't say anything, then I would become very passive aggressive, and then what? 5 years later, do a Me Too on him? No, it's like. But this is why it's like we have to. So it's so important that we have to empower each other, to empower women to speak up. We have to empower, because it must be so uncomfortable to be day in, day out not vocalizing that, I'm feeling sexually violated right here. Like, I'm feeling that my personal boundary has been crossed a lot. And that's a really awful position to be in. Yeah. Awful. Definitely. So I'm just coming out of the recording because as I listen back to myself here in this bit, I can hear that I should have been more nuanced here, as it is not only women that are responsible to teach. I feel that men need to, of course, take on the initiative on learning to read the room and learning about permission and consent, which is also something that actually Bobbi and I talk about in the episode, that, learn to read the room. Understand that when someone freezes, does not equal consent nor permission. That's it. And now we're going back into the episode.
And then you feel, the shame and the guilt and all of that, which lives in the dark. But even, I know quite a few really amazing men, like I said, and we need men to also, when it's just men and they're talking, with no women present, that they stand up. I mean, there's a few, okay, exchange your stories, do whatever you're going to do. But as soon as someone sort of starts crossing the line of being disrespectful, and, talking poorly, other men should stand. Men should also correct men, not just women correcting men.
Yeah, it is true. It is true. And the thing is, just now when we're talking now, I realize also that this is also why it can take so long for people to come out. Mm-hmm. Because, like with women, it's like, why does it take so long? It's because of all these feelings. It's like this inner conflict of, well, I didn't say anything. I wasn't comfortable. Why does he think it's okay? You know what I mean? Yeah. It's just like, so, but obviously, like you were saying with to bring it back to women's advancement, right? Where it has had like a sort of like a bad knock-on effect, the Me Too movement with, let's say if there's someone who'd be a great mentor for you, but he's a man, and that because of the Me Too, he may not be comfortable actually to mentor you, because obviously mentoring usually means that it's one-on-one conversations, right? They're confidential. Mm-hmm. It's a very special relationship.
Yeah. So
is this something that you see changing, or how do we circumvent that? If you want to have a great mentor in business, or because so far it's still mainly men that are ahead in their life, so the likelihood of it needing a man mentor is quite high.
Yeah. It's I mean, there's three things. So the first is, most men aren't one step away from sexually harassing you. So going in looking for it, and assuming that it's going to happen is probably not the best approach.
No.
So there's that. Secondly, having a true mentor-mentee, like a structured one or an unstructured one, like they don't need to be your official mentor, but you do need to have relationships with, decision makers regardless.
Yeah.
And that does involve more than a 15-minute coffee meeting in an open space office. Yeah. It does involve spending time, and like you said, it's all about relationships, and people have to start to navigate that and ask questions. Can we? Because it's not all women are also comfortable. It's not just that the men are uncomfortable; the women are uncomfortable. So if we go for dinner and we talk business and we have a couple drinks, and then somebody says something, and pretty soon, you've gone down the wrong road, of either a true harassment or a misunderstanding. Both aren't that great. And so, learning how to navigate that is very important.
But you see, with that bit, there's something that you mentioned in the YouTube video about, which I think that's really important to bring up, is that there's obviously there's like a spectrum, like you said, there's one person says the wrong thing, and then, it could down spiral, right? So there's a thing between, I think you mentioned, and I'm quoting you, I think, like, hopefully I'm not misquoting, but like there's differences between super legit harassment claim, like someone's actually, they grab your boobs at lunch, like it's not okay. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Body parts, or like fully saying, if you don't sleep with me,
yeah.
Or, hey, if we can get together, then maybe I might,
I might help you getting promoted.
Yeah, exactly. Like more explicit ones. Yeah, exactly.
To misunderstandings, like, like a bad joke, right? Which is why I would say with that example I gave with that CEO, back then, to actually, when you meet someone and you feel a romantic attraction, to actually wanting to maybe,
Yeah, like a lot of guys feel a lot of pressure. I don't know about in Europe, but in Canada, we kind of still, a lot of women like the man to approach the woman, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
So they're bearing all the risk, and they are at the workplace, and they might actually like you, like legitimately, not in a creepy way. They like you. So it's them who have to kind of come up and sort of plant the seed, and like, so did you want to maybe go for coffee or whatever? And there are some women that just legit respond poorly to that. Like, oh my God, I don't like this guy. Why is he asking me out? Now I feel so uncomfortable. And they consider him creepy because, well, just because you don't like him.
Because they're not into him. Yes.
Creepy.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
He obviously likes you. So you could be like a little bit more gentle. But what I can tell you too is if the guy came to you and said the exact same words in the exact same way, but you actually did like him, everything would be fine.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So we have to, like I said, and more than 50% of people find a partner or a sex partner or someone to play with or, a marriage partner, whatever, in the workplace. And there's no policy in the world that any company can write that's going to stop that. People won't stop. So rather than that, let's give people the tools to navigate these situations.
So what would you suggest for that? So let's say, you at work and you're a dude and and you like the woman, because I think there's also context, right? Because I think if you're the boss, doesn't matter what gender you are, if you're the boss, you should not be the first one to make the move because it puts, do you know what I mean? Like that's my opinion.
It depends who you're talking to.
Well, exactly. So that's why it's only my opinion. Exactly. So I want to hear the other side that you're saying, but I could also see how an employee could harass the boss. Like, do you know what I mean? Like the pressure, like what's that movie with Idris Elba and Beyonce and the harasser is the blonde woman. Do you remember that?
No, but I know the movie. I haven't seen it, but no, I understand.
She's a secretary harassing the boss and he's married. And she basically, she does like what you'd expect almost like a bad guy to do. She's taken on the role of the villain that normally is assigned to a man. So it's very interesting to watch actually.
Well, FYI, not all women are angels.
What I say.
So let's be real here.
Absolutely. I know men who've been harassed by women, the audition couch when, as actors. That's why I was surprised there weren't any men coming out because obviously maybe it wasn't the right time, but I've heard men being harassed by both men and women. So it's not,
no, it definitely happens, not in the same numbers, which is probably why, we don't hear about it. And most men actually don't care that much. They shrug it off because they are in a different position. So it doesn't mean the same thing, generally speaking. But there's definitely, any boss and employee type of relationship that can be very dodgy. It depends on the company. It depends on the context. It depends on everything. Like in certain sectors, like the government and academia, there's a lot of people who are married to each other, and there's a lot of families there. So sort of meeting and dating someone within those areas is not unusual. Same within the arts and theater and stuff like that. There's a lot of people because they spend a lot of time.
Yes.
Scientists and artists, for example, their days are long. They're not regular 9-to-5 jobs. And so they tend to marry each other. But, when there's depends on the company, but generally speaking, I would shy away from, boss employee type of relationships if you can. If you are like just madly in love and it's like, this is it for each other, then someone should get another job, or you need to head to HR and fill out a form and do that.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, it's all about context, like you said. So, people can pick up my book if they want to know more tips. Yeah. But generally speaking, you have to read the room. You can't go into every context and just be that one dimension person that you are. Like, I'm going to tell a sex joke no matter what is the situation. You have to be appropriate. You have to read the room.
We want people to have courage and be themselves. We don't need you to be brazen all the time. You know what I mean?
That's it. So, when you're in a professional environment, you do need to read the room and figure out who's there. And if there's somebody that you genuinely like, you do have to take it a bit more slow and feel out the room and see, how people react. Some work environments are very conservative. And so you could never tell a sex joke in that situation. And you probably, should stay away from, getting close to any of those boundaries. But there are other work environments where, workplace culture right now is very, very important. So people very much like to be closer to themselves rather than I'm completely different person at work than I am in my personal life. There's a lot of, that's all kind of mashing up now.
So what did you say? People don't want to have a separate persona at work as they have in their free time. Is that what you're saying?
That's where I see a lot of people just don't want to pretend anymore. And so that's why when you have environments where you're spending a lot of time, you're playing games, like let's pretend we're at Google, you can take naps, you can play ping pong with people, video games, like you're doing all sorts of things. This is not professional. You're building personal relationships.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people become friends when you're at work.
Mm-hmm.
You become lovers, you become dating. So all of this is happening. People just need to be eyes wide open and, follow the whole read the room, pay attention, ask questions, consent before you start touching people and asking them out, right?
Yeah,
you want to build a bit of a relationship first.
I think it's almost like being better, like you said, reading the room and reading the person, because we're all so different. And same thing, if you approach someone, they may not react in the way that you expect them to, and we're making assumptions. And so it's really about getting to know people and becoming better at human psychology, right? I mean, it sounds like it sounds so complicated, I guess. Like, it's not as easy as just, hey, want to come out for a drink after work, but I guess we all have to
pay attention.
The men have to protect them, like because there are good men out there, like they need to protect themselves, making sure they're not doing things that are going to get them in trouble, in the same way as we women have to have the vocabulary, the confidence, knowing that it's okay that it's needed. Actually, you're not doing anyone any favor. You're not being nice to him by just going along with it. You're harming the whole dynamic, and you're harming yourself, more importantly, and it's not helping other women. And in him not being cognizant to the fact that you may not be crazy about him, you're not vocalizing anything, him not recognizing that is also damaging to her, to him, and to the to society. Is that we need to be more sensitive, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, historically, men have had a hard time understanding women, generally speaking. And sometimes women send mixed signals. She's flirting with me, so I think she likes me, but I'm not sure. And so I don't know what to do. Is she just being friendly? I can't tell. Like, men get very confused about that. So it's really, it's important to be clear in your intentions and stuff. Right. And because if you're going to flirt, which is, I mean, I do it all the time, so I'm fine with it. That means if someone takes my flirting as an invitation and they ask me out, that's my job to, tell them, like, I understand, like, I like flirting, but no thanks,
Yeah.
So you can expect, if you're going to flirt with people, you can expect people to think that you might like them. Flirting
is also a way of human relationships. Like, flirting has had such a bad rap for some reason, but actually, it's not even, I don't even think it's flirting. It's just like, sometimes, like, I know, like, when I'm on, when I've worked in corporate, is that, let's say if I have to call someone in a different region and we have to get things done, and maybe they're like, the relationship with them and the company is not great, you have to warm them up a little bit. And, and it's not even flirting, it's actually I find it's being present to the other person and actually making them smile a little bit. And for that, you have to just turn it on a little bit and go, oh my God, I can't believe you said that. And oh my God, yeah, no, isn't it just terrible today? Yeah, whatever, And you start to just warm it up a little bit, because otherwise it's all, again, clinical, controlled, sterile. And you know what? Nobody wants to work with someone who just says, yeah, I just need that paper over by 5 to get it done.
That's it. I mean, you said it right. Flirting is it's got a bad rap. I'm very pro flirting. Incidentally, in men, it's called charming, and that's fine when men do it. And women do it, it's flirting and it's manipulative.
You said maybe we should just say friendly. It's actually just being friendly.
Friendly?
Yeah, friendly. Because if I'm flirting with you, you will know. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like I'm being friendly, but then there's actually where it crosses the line is if I'm like, maybe like if you start to squeeze your boobs and bend over and pick up something on the floor, or if you start to make sexual innuendos, yes, then you've crossed the line, in my opinion, right? Then that would go. But that's not what I'm doing. I'm just there being friendly with you as if you were someone I've known for a long time, and we're just having an easy chat. I will chat with you the same way as if I'm waiting for coffee at Starbucks, right? So, but we just happen to be talking about accounting.
Right? Yeah, but that's the thing. Like each person does it in their own way, which then other people are like, well, I can't tell. And then my answer is, again, just pay attention, pay more attention. You're going to figure it out when you get to know people.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, to be honest, you can also tell, like, because I do it with men and women. I mean, I just, because otherwise it's so harsh. You gotta be friendly. Yeah, I guess it depends on cultures, right? Maybe in certain countries it will be different. The world is in the grey. Reality is in the grey. And I know you've mentioned something somewhere else about grey thinking, right?
Yes.
In this context, which is really important, and also to understand that things is not linear, right? Things can be conflicting. Like, given the example you said before, maybe that guy who asked you out, your colleague asking you out for a coffee date, you think he's a creep, but actually, if he was good looking, you're into him, you'd think he was charming. Right? So that's why it's conflicting, right? That's why there is no really straight rules.
Right.
So I saw you posted something on Instagram that said, reduce risks of sexual harassment in your workplace. Would you mind just sort of diverging a little bit? Like, is this like for men, for women, or also non-binary? Like, I don't even know how, I don't even feel equipped for that conversation, how someone who's non-binary, how they actually approach, how they'll perceive it. But so based on like your knowledge, what you do, what are the things that we can reduce risks of sexual harassment at work?
So at the risk of repeating myself, it's basically the crux of the book, right? And so I have come to realize, I have a theory that a sex positive, open communication workplace will significantly, if not completely, eliminate sexual harassment cases at work. And so this is why the training is really important. And the way that people learn and modify behaviors is also critical. People can read books and they can look at webinars and become aware, and that's great, but that doesn't change behavior. We need training. I'm developing a training program that literally you have to get physical with it, meaning you have to stand up in front of a room in looking someone else in the eye and practice in a safe environment how to say certain phrases that you may need to say in the future. And when we have these training programs that get people practiced up and comfortable with these activities, I can guarantee you most of the sexual harassment will go away, because 2/3 of it, like I said, are misunderstandings.
Yeah.
And the how to deal with the power structures is in the training program. I'll have something very specific for C-suite management level people, and getting them sort of ramped up onto what are the things that you can do and you can't do and shouldn't do. And here's a whole bunch of tools on how you can modify your behavior, not just your thinking, right? So it's you need to change minds and change behaviors at the same time, because what you don't want is someone who is in a situation where in their mind they want to do one thing, and then they realize that's going to get me in trouble, so I guess I better say this or do that, or I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't touch her, I shouldn't say this. What we want is someone that never actually comes to that decision, where they are already aware of the appropriate behaviors and they have adopted them in their mind and in their actions, so that they don't have to make a decision to stop themselves from doing bad behavior that they want to do.
Yeah, I really like what you said about, is what I call like embodiment, like it's not just reading about it, watching a webinar, but it's actually doing it too, because you have to practice it to for it to become a second nature. Which that's definitely very important. And I wanted to ask, based on what you said, like a sex positive workplace, what does that look like? What does that mean, sex positive in a workplace?
So what that means is that companies aren't going to promote, but they should understand that people will meet at work, and that they should not be penalizing people for that, because it's better if you have an open environment, and then it's more likely that things will be public, right? Like I said, you don't want stuff in the dark. Guilt and shame and all of that lives in the dark. So if people are dating at work, they shouldn't be afraid to let that be known, right? I'm not saying people need to make out in the office. I'm just saying that you shouldn't have to hide. And that when you have a sex positive workplace, that means that you've had the training, that you understand what are positive behaviors and what are negative behaviors, and that everyone can feel safe in themselves, safe in their sexuality, safe in their identity. If you're gay, you're trans, you're binary, it doesn't matter. All of that is completely open. It's for me too. I mean, I'm a sexual person. So when you meet me, I just transmit. I'm friendly, I'm charming, I'm open to sexual discussions. Obviously I've written, a book about it. So then people tend to talk more about that with me than they would your average person. And that's okay, but it should be where people are just comfortable in their own bodies, and in their own sexual energy, because there's also, part of my book talks about sexual energy and how to harness that in a positive way. And, how there's a whole chapter on, there's research that shows, flirting during negotiations can be helpful sometimes.
People do flirt in negotiating. It's part of a technique, actually.
Of course.
I think, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so getting comfortable with that, where it's not that, you're offering, there's a bedroom in the workplace where people can go do stuff. It's just that it shouldn't be so taboo.
Yeah. And I think also, I think that's important to sort of like bring that needle back from that overcorrection, right? Because and I understand it. That's how, that's part of, human nature. We overcorrect because there's all this fear and this shock that's happening. Yeah. And then realizing that, oh, wait, not everybody's like this. And actually, there are exceptions. Actually, oh, yes, I can. It's okay to fall in love with someone I work with or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, certain things are okay. There's discernment. And I think maybe even nowadays, sometimes that overcorrection has been taken to, and it doesn't matter what it is that, whatever topic that's going on, is that overcorrection has gone to a level that I feel that may not have been there before, because there is this thing about narrowcasting. Have you heard about this?
What is it?
Narrowcasting. Have you heard about this?
No.
So that's something that I came across. So this is the late Baron Jonathan Sachs, I believe. He talks about, so, you have like confirmation bias. So, anyone that would agree, we tend to have more conversations with them. And, so they'll just reaffirm how we already feel. And that's how we feel that so many people are feeling the same. And we're very self-righteous. Yeah. And then you have the other phenomenon in parallel, which, the original term broadcasting, when we used to watch TV, years and years ago, most of us had just maybe 3 to 5 terrestrial channels, right? And so one message was sent out. So there's a message in the news was sent out to many, many, many different people. So everyone had access to that same information, whether that be good or bad, that's something else. But one message, one was just sent out, right? Yeah. However, now, because social media is very niche, we niching. So we follow people we have confirmation bias with. So we follow people we agree. Very rarely do people follow people to expand their horizon on something they don't agree with. It's usually follow what they like. So when you have that, what they found, there's a study at Harvard that says that mixture of narrowcasting, confirmation bias, basically renders people more and more extreme in their thinking, which we've seen. I mean, I'm very put off by, how the world is reacting towards different things, like how there is no discernment anymore. You can't have a conversation, you know, whether it's to do with a vaccine or with anything. Do you know what I mean? It's like you're either with or against us.
Very divided.
Very divided, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better. And so I think, you know, the reason why I'm bringing this up is that, you know, this is why it's important to do the work that you do in terms of bringing in the conversation. And we may not always see eye to eye, you know, like I think it's always great to have differences of opinion. It shows that we're living in a democracy. It shows that we are not in a dictatorship. You know, when it becomes too far, I wouldn't be able to disagree with you, for example, for fear of being, you know, put to prison, or vice versa, right? It could be you who fears for your opinions. So I think that's why, like, to actually now go back and say, hey, okay, we know there's this overcorrection that's been happening, but now can we just sit down and talk about the human factor that we all, there's exceptions all the time. You know, this is not how all men are, how all women are, how all situations are. So yeah, I think it's an important battle that needs to be taking place in many areas, but I think that's definitely an important one. Because we need allies, right? In terms of, if you want men to get better, if we want men to be better, to not sexually harass, we have to empower them too. You cannot be empowered if you step down on them. And I think that's what a lot of sometimes the feminists, not all of them, but some feminist movement, they want to trash them and man bashing. And that's how you become popular and have a bestseller. But I don't want to go on that train. It's not going to, you know, we all know men that we're related to. Do we want people to talk about them that way? No, I don't. So,
no. But the thing is that polarizing people doesn't solve problems. So we need everybody on board with this solution. And, you know, that's why I think the training is really important, because the training is actually counter to confirmation bias. We are going to train you on how to have confrontational conversations. How do you oppose someone in the workplace on a topic that is so touchy?
Yeah. Yeah. And
the sooner we learn that, the better off we'll all be.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. I think that's really, really good. We need to be teaching that at school, actually. Yeah. Is there anything that you know, I know obviously it's a big conversation, right? There's so many different directions we could still take it in. But is there anything that you feel that you like to add to what we spoke about? Is there anything you feel you maybe not have had a chance to say? I may have interrupted you, or is there anything that maybe I didn't ask you? Is there anything that you'd like to add? And you know, I want to make sure that you get that opportunity.
Yeah, I don't feel like I missed anything, but I mean, Angie, honestly, I could talk about this all day. So there really is no end to the things that I could continue talking about on the topic. But I think we made some good progress here.
I really appreciate it. It's not an easy conversation to have, I feel. I mean, I've got sweaty armpits now. I actually do have sweaty armpits. Damn, I'm gonna have to wash this jumper. Okay. So then what I'm gonna do, Bobbi, is I'm gonna go into the finishing thoughts, which are the same two questions I ask all my guests. And so the first one is, what do you wish you'd realized or understood at 18?
Oh, yes. I wish I would have realized that I didn't have to have sex with a guy to get him to like me.
Gosh, yeah. Definitely. And the second one is, what stuff do you not put up with anymore?
Oh God, I don't put up with a lot anymore. Yes. I don't put up with identity in the sense of, I don't want to be locked in a box, right? So people want, you know, you to be a certain type of person, and, you know, I don't affiliate with a religion. I don't even affiliate. What does it mean to be Canadian? You know, I'm married, but I'm, you know, monogamish. Oh, well, are you bi? Do you like women? It's like, I do what I want when I want, kind of thing. I don't like I refuse to be put in a box.
Yeah. Yeah, it's right, because I definitely like really identify with that. Like I've never liked to be put into a religion box either. I have nothing against religion. I just don't like the restrictions around it and the intolerance around it. Oh, you belong to one group, so then the other one is not your group. I just don't get that. I don't like to be part of a and so, okay, so Bobbi, can you please tell us, where can people find you? How can they get your book? How can they work with you? Do you also do remote working, in the age of online?
Yes, yes, of course. So my website, www.sexualintelligenceinbusiness.com. So you can read more about the book, and there's a link there to Amazon. But the book is available on all Amazons and Indigo bookstores in Europe and North America. Also, you can find me on LinkedIn at Bobbi Bidochka, Bobbibidochka. The same handle on Twitter, the same handle on Instagram. I'm the only one in the world, so it's a unique name. You won't. It doesn't. It's not too hard to find me. Facebook I don't fancy, so don't bother there. And it's if anybody would like to share their first time or early sexual experiences for my second book research project, then people can definitely hit me up about that. And any other type of training and consultation on the matter, open to that as well.
Thank you so much for today, Bobbi.
Thank you so much, Angie.
And that's our episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to rate, review, share it, subscribe it on iTunes, follow it on Spotify, or whichever platform you listen from. However you show love is how you can support this show. Drop me your questions or suggestions for future episodes via the website at angie-ness.com, or come and find me on Instagram at @toolfordishitpodcast. See you next week, and until then,
Using health inappropriately.